Howdy folks, thanks for joining me today here at the homestead and for another episode of Porch Talk. And I want to say welcome to all of our new subscribers, and we certainly as always, we appreciate all of our loyal viewers and subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. If you have a comment on today's video, we'd love to hear from you. And if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. That always helps us. Sometimes folks want to help and say, how can we help you? And one way is by subscribing. And so anyway, I'm going to get right on into the subject today. And that is the Second Great Depression. What if we have a second Great Depression? I don't know what they would call it. Maybe they would call it the Great Depression or the Second Great Depression. You know, there are terminologies of a depression, and there's so many recessions in a row, so much economic negativity in a row that would lead into what they would call a depression. But I'll tell you what I feel depression is, whether it met the term or not. It would be probably be worldwide economic collapse, economic fallout of a degree that we have not seen yet. And we certainly, people are still going and buying and doing and still working. I know there's a lot of people who aren't, but there's still a lot of people who are. We haven't reached the level yet, I don't feel like, of a depression, and I hope we don't. A lot of economic folks that I have watched and read, they believe that we are going to recover from this, and that within this next quarter, or at least by around the 1st of September, the economy will be rolling again back as normal. Everything will be fine. One economic guru claims that it'll be V-shaped. It'll just be upwards. We're at the bottom right now, and we're just going to climb out of this thing, and all sectors of the industries, everything's just going to be hitting on all four cylinders, and we're going to be just fine. And I hope that's true. I hope that is so. But there are others, some that may not call themselves economists, but that have been studying what's been going on, world activities, some that are following some of the agendas that have been going on, political agendas and so forth, some that actually are following the numbers and the trails, that they believe we're headed into a bad situation. I hope that we aren't. I hope we're going to head back in and everything's going to get back to normal. But if we head into what some believe we're going to be headed into, now's the time to be getting ready. And when I talk about a depression, it's not so just financial. Financial, that'd be tough because folks are used to pretty much going and buying and doing whatever they want to do. And nowadays, people pretty well have it made compared to the way it was, say, 30 years ago. People are much better off. Some people may say they're not, but the home I live in is a lot better home than I lived in 30 years ago. The vehicle I'm driving is a lot better vehicle than I had 30 years ago. I'm in a lot better financial shape than I was 30 years ago, and especially 40 and 50 years ago. So when I started out, we were humble beginnings. If you wonder what a depression is like, there was some of the old songs was made because of Depression era folks. For instance, Loretta Lynn had that song, Coal Miner's Daughter, and she said she was proud to be a coal miner's daughter. In the wintertime, come fall, you know, they'd all get a brand new pair of shoes because their daddy would go and sell a hog. And that song was the way it was. Back in the Depression days, folks just didn't have any money, and some would trade or barter or do things in order to get enough money. The kids didn't get a new pair of shoes. They didn't get the name brand shoes. It was whatever they could afford, and come springtime, if you had your shoes wore out, my dad and his aunts and siblings have told a lot of stories. They grew up right across the field here. They didn't think it was that rough at the time, but now that they are grown up and all of them are doing way better than they did growing up, they will tell you they were poor folk. But it wasn't just them. Everybody around was poor. People just didn't have anything. There was no money. You would work all week for like $20 for the entire week. I mean, my dad and them, one thing that they used to tell about is his sisters would milk cows. They had milking shorthorns, not with a milking machine, but they would milk them by hand. And they'd have to do that, his sisters would, before school and after school, and that was extra income for the family. My dad worked for people around here, and as a boy, really young, all of his brothers drove tractors and equipment and helped farm in this area. My dad drove a truck and hauled grain before he ever had a driver's license. When they met a cop, he would sit real big up in the seat. And one time they got in trouble, and there was a story about getting in trouble, not having a driver's license, and the state trooper saying, well, you better head back with this 18-wheeler I'm talking about. But people had to do things in order to survive. Nowadays we've got so many laws and rules, and people wouldn't even think of doing such things as that. But it was a rough situation that everybody was going through. I remember as a boy, in this post-Depression era, I mean, quite some time, in the 60s, born in the 60s there, and we didn't have any money. The little home I was raised in right here, we didn't have air conditioning. Didn't miss it though. You don't miss what you don't have. We did have running water inside. It worked off of a spring that was down here on the creek, and we lost our electricity a bunch. The electric would go off. It'd just have to thunder, and I used to laugh as a kid. I'd say all it has to do is thunder, and it scares our electricity into going off. Well, we had an outhouse back over here in the corner here where my chicken yard is. Used to be a little outhouse, and a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people would have trouble having to go back to using one of those. And by the way, the land here isn't destroyed or corrupted because we had an outhouse. We rarely ever had to use it because we only used it when we didn't have running water. But if the electric went off, our pump wouldn't work, so we didn't have water. And Mom would keep a little bit of water caught up in jugs and stuff just in case something happened. We had a milk cow. My dad worked construction work. He drove heavy equipment, and he helped build dams. He helped build this dam here that we live near Lock and Dam 16, and he went on and helped with Lock and Dam 17. And he would get up very, very early in the mornings, and he'd have to go out and milk the cow before daylight. And I can remember, my dad going out, and I'd be awake. I'd want to go with him, and they'd say, no, it's too early. You stay in the house. And, it won't be long. You'll be around. It'll be time to get ready for school and stuff. But my dad would go out and milk the cow, and he put the milk in what we called lard buckets. Used to, instead of buying Crisco, you bought your shortening or your grease as just pure lard in buckets. Another thing that we did here and was real common during my dad's time is you raised your own pork, and you mostly lived off of pork. And could folks go back to this? So what I'm talking about, could you survive? Would you survive if, people are used to these sugar cured hams and stuff you get at the supermarket, and this really nice quality bacon for the most part you get. And our hogs were raised off of slop. And the slop is what slop is your leftover stuff from the table. So it went to the hogs, and we would mix up in a bucket shorts. If you're familiar with shorts, it's a wheat byproduct, and you would mix it up in a bucket with water, and you would pour your scraps in there, and you'd feed that to the hogs. They'd get really fat on it. Some people went and would get scraps from the schools or from supermarkets and things. Some still do that today. But anyway, we would feed the hogs the slop, so we didn't have a whole lot of money in them. And that's what we ate on. Our ham that we used to have was the old time kind of salty hams that they would let hang up. We used to have that. Now, you know, I do like the sugar cured hams too, but I still like those old type hams. If you've ever been to Cracker Barrel and you've ordered their ham, they have that old, they call it country ham. And there is a difference. You'll have some ham that's got the bone in it, and they'll call it country ham, but it's got more of a sugar cure on it. But an old country ham, they will season and put in a type of a sack deal and hang it up, and it'll actually even get mold on the outside of that. And but anyway, my aunt one time down here, the last time I remember anyone fixing a ham that way, she fixed her little building thing outside, and she took the hams off of her hogs and had them out there, and my dad and some of them took one of those hams just to tease my aunt, you know, and then she goes out there and one of her hams is missing. But anyway, but I liked that ham, but I got tired of it because we had it so much. If you went on a field trip for school, they'd take you on a field trip once a year down here at our school, and we would go up here to a local place, and it's just more like a park thing, but you'd get to spend the whole day there with your friends and stuff. And while you were there, you had to bring a sack lunch, and my mom would fry me a ham sandwich, and it was the old, sure enough, country ham. And put it on between two pieces of bread and have mustard on it. I got sick of that stuff. For a long time, I quit eating that, but now I'm back to eating it. One thing we had to eat a lot of was beans. And if you've been around my generation or older, you realize that was a staple, a main staple that you ate on. We were raised up on pinto beans, and still today I like pinto beans. And I did get burned out on them for a while. We even had beans a lot at school. We had beans almost every meal. Now, if you had to go back to that, and I'm just telling you, could you survive if you had to go back? We have friends that for their children, they'll run to McDonald's every meal or for supper time, and they'll go get them a Happy Meal at McDonald's because their children won't eat regular food, what I call real food. I had a cousin that his mama passed away, and his dad was trying to raise him, and they were just having a rough time. This has been, 30 years ago, but more. But he come to stay with us, and he ate with us a lot. He would slip down and come down to our home when it was supper time. And his dad, I guess, just didn't know how to cook, or just didn't cook or whatever. But he got to figuring out what time that we ate supper, about 5 o'clock. So he would show up down here to eat supper. And he was quite a bit younger than me, probably 10 years at the time younger than me. So when I was 18, he was like, 10-year-old, something like that. But he would walk from his house about a mile down here, and he'd be here for supper time. And when we were used to, if somebody was at your house and it was supper time, they would just eat with you. If you had company and it was time to eat, now if they didn't want to eat, they might say, no, we're going to go on home, or we'll sit in the living room here and wait till y'all get done. But most people would just join you and eat right in. And my cousin, he would come down here as a little boy and he would eat. And I remember one time him telling my mom that he liked real food. And that was, back in that day, we didn't have any fast food around here close, but he liked real food. He liked good old country cooking. But people had to eat things. We had a lot of fried potatoes too. Didn't have a lot of rice. My dad's never been a rice eater, so we kind of missed out on that, although I love rice. But you had to buy things that were cheap. We'd buy 100-pound sacks of potatoes. I don't know if you can even get a 100-pound sack of potatoes nowadays. All I see is the little 10-pound, 20-pound bags. But we used to go to a place, a farmer's market type deal, and buy 100-pound sacks of potatoes. And my sisters, I have 3 sisters, and they become expert potato peelers. They knew how to peel potatoes. Our clothes, you wore your clothes till they just got plumb wore out. We had, especially my clothes, when I was the oldest, and when my jeans, the bottoms would get wore off, and I'd get holes in the knees and stuff. Nowadays, people go and pay good money for those kind of clothes. They'd get pretty faded out, but we wore them until you couldn't wear them anymore. My jeans for years was out of the Sears Roebuck and Company catalog. My mom would order, and we would get our new clothes in about school time. We'd each get a few new pairs of pants and shoes and things like that. We'd get one pair of shoes, and we would wear them all the time. And my dad's generation was about the same way. You wore them to church, everything. If you did happen to get 2 pairs of shoes, you would really have to take care of that one pair. Mom would make sure, if you got a good, nice pair to just wear to church and maybe to school. But if I remember a lot of years, I had 1 pair of shoes. That was to feed the hogs in, to feed the cattle in, to feed the chickens in, everything, hunt in, fish in, whatever, and then go to school and go to church in. And they would get kind of stinky from time to time. I remember having a pair that the side blew out, and we took duct tape and just wrapped around that pair of shoes, and I wore it for a while like that, and wore it to school and stuff and to church. I didn't think nothing of it, and I'm not too good to do that today. But my story or idea today on this porch talk is, could you survive? If you went back to a time when you had to save your money to buy things, where there was no credit, you couldn't jump out and buy a new vehicle. Could you make your vehicle last 200,000 or 300,000 miles? Would you take better care of stuff? Would you save? Back in that particular time, people that did have money and it would ever get any extra actually saved it instead of just blowing it on everything. They saved money. We have very few people in America that actually save any money. Now, to me right now, it's rather than save money and put cash back, I think everybody ought to have a little emergency fund put back. That's my own personal beliefs and things, that everybody ought to have a little bit of reserves. But if you need to, or if you haven't already, take your money and invest in things that will help protect you and your family. For instance, having some food preserves put back. Whether you got to buy them at the store, whatever. We have a local store now that's selling these food freeze dryers. They look like a dryer cabinet. Big things. They're $2,200, and they're actually went to selling them because it's a big movement in our area to buy these cabinets, and so they've started actually selling them at the local hardware store. Just like you would go in and buy some other type of appliance, you can buy one of theirs. But a lot of folks are moving in to that type of stuff and investing in that, realizing that it'd be better to be prepared where you could feed your family. A lot of folks tell me, lots of folks are telling me that they've either been getting out of debt or they're working on getting out of debt right now. In our area, maybe it's not this way in the rest of the country, but a lot of people are telling me they're working on getting out of debt. They're working on getting food preserved back. Many were already started, but there has been a big jump of people that have started since this Kung Flu epidemic hit us. They have started going in and just really preparing and getting ready. A lot of people have told me that about 10 or 12 years ago in that area, they felt an urgency to get out of debt and to get their financial situation situated, get it fixed, straightened out. And some have told me that they were doing it, and then they kind of let their guard up and they went back to normal. But many have told me they've kept on it. They have, many told me they started raising rabbits, their own chickens, and then most that I talk to right now in our area, they may not call themselves homesteaders or preppers, but they have upped their game. They're doing more. They've gotten more canning jars. They've growing bigger gardens. Most were preparing so that they could grow most of their own food. And many folks around here now are telling me they're going to try this year to grow most of their own food, to have more of the things that they would need next winter to survive on. So if we have a bad winter, they've got food preserved and put back. That's not a bad idea. What if nothing happens? Have you heard anything? You certainly haven't heard at all. But if you fail to prepare, that is the worst thing ever, is to fail to prepare. Can you be prepared for everything? I don't think so. I don't think nobody will ever be prepared for everything. I wish we could be, but this is the thing. You can prepare and you can be ready. And just keep that thought in your mind, is what if we had a depression? And look back, if you know anything about the Depression era, look back on how the way things were then, and say, could I survive now if I lost my job? Some folks have told me that they knew people who lost their farms around our area here that just couldn't pay the property taxes. It wasn't, they didn't believe in maybe being in debt or anything. They were debt free, but they didn't have enough money to even pay the property taxes. And property taxes was a whole lot cheaper back in the day than they are right now. Here, now, every little thing is all about the children. The children. So they build a new school, they'll build a new gym, even though they have what I feel is good facilities, they'll come up with excuses to build more. And the last thing they built here was a big gym, nice fancy one, and I did vote for it. They had tried running them before, and the ones they had before was multi-million-dollar facilities when we live in a little bitty community here. This last one was, they finally got down to like $1.5 million for a gymnasium. And, now that this Kung Flu, they weren't even allowed to use it. I had to have a virtual graduation and stuff. I think they're going to try this summer to maybe have a real graduation if the government will let them go back to using the facilities again. But my point was, we're a small town, and it means everybody that owns property, it's going to go up. And we have a whole lot of people here that are on fixed incomes, retirees that have moved here. It's going to be rough on them. But a lot of those very retirees voted for this thing, and their taxes have went up, and they're whining and moaning and groaning about their taxes. Ours went up, but I think, hey, I voted for it, but now look where we're at. So in a big huge city, $1.5 million probably ain't no big deal, but here $1.5 million is a pretty big thing. But the point I'm driving at is this: you're going to have to pay your property taxes. Could you do that? Do you have enough maybe set aside that you could pay a year or 2 years worth of property taxes? Maybe have that set aside somehow so you could at least do that. Do you have any kind of plan and preparations? Do I think we're headed into a Great Depression? I believe we are. And one point that I get is, I'm a Bible believer, Christian, born again. I believe what the Bible says. And there's a place in Revelations that says that it'll take a day's wage to buy a loaf of bread. It also describes a lot of other events that's going to happen that aren't pretty. And I think we're going through some rough times that point towards those things that are in the Bible. Without getting into a big Bible debate, there are some preachers saying that this is nothing to do with that. It's just a natural occurring thing. Whether it is or not, these are rough times. And it talks about a tribulations that will come. A tribulation just means troubles, multiplied troubles. And we just went through here a year, 2 years ago, we went through great fires. Burned off a big part of the state here. We even had big fires just right here close to us that was scary. We had last year, we had devastating flooding. I mean, that has never been seen before here. Just unbelievable flooding. Me and my boys got a fishing video, and I took some video of the dam and was describing the water, just unbelievable amounts of water that came through here. And it wasn't just here, around the country. So then the fluctuations in the weather systems. Then this year we had this Kung flu epidemic. So yes, I think we're in troublesome times. And I think it's going to get worse as time goes on. It's my own personal belief. If I'm wrong, hey, I'll be glad to say I'm wrong. That's no problem. I'd be glad to say I was wrong, that we were just going through something and it all went back to normal, and it's fine. But I do remember a few years ago they were making fun of people who were preppers, and they were putting videos up of on TV. They were doing a show, Doomsday Preppers, and everything people were preparing for, they were saying that they talked to the experts and it wouldn't happen. Some were preparing for a pandemic. People said it wouldn't happen. The experts said it's highly unlikely that it would happen, that would shut down the economy. Look where we are today. There's people said devastating natural disasters, and look where we are today. In fact, this year they're saying they believe we're going to have a very bad hurricane. The weather experts are saying very bad hurricane season. And we've already seen tornadoes and such like as that, and flooding. Up in Michigan, several dams broke, and they had great flooding just up in Michigan just here recently. Plus, if those hurricanes always cost us billions of dollars. Plus the Kung flu. You know, folks, if we aren't headed into bad situations, I don't know what a bad situation is. But I'm going to be prepared, and I'm going to do the best I can. And then I'm going to do all I can, and then I'm going to trust God for the rest. And I'm going to trust God to help me get prepared now. In the Bible days, God helped prepare the children of Israel when they left Egypt. He told them to have their dough ready, to have things prepared and ready when they left. Now there come a time later that they ran out. All their provisions was gone, and God provided manna out of heaven. A lot of people don't tell this part of the story, but they had food and sustenance to last for a while. But then it ran out, and God provided them food, and provided them manna, provided them quail, even provided them water. God will provide if you will trust in Him. But He expects us to do our part. He provides worms for birds, but He don't cram it down their throat. And even when they had quail and manna, God made them get up and go get it. He didn't just bring it to their front doorsteps and say, here you go. They had to do something. So He expects us to do our part. And I'm preparing for the worst, but I'm hoping and praying for the best. And I hope you're prepared if we should happen to go through another Great Depression, that you and your family will be prepared. I certainly appreciate you watching today. May God richly bless you, and we'll see you next week here for more Porch Talk at 7 o'clock on Tuesday nights. God bless you. We're gone.